The sky over Averon 9 never brightened. It only shifted between shades of dying twilight. Gray, purple, ash. A perpetual half-light, as if the sun refused to waste its warmth on a planet meant for those who had been discarded. Every gust of wind cut like dry ice across the jagged terrain, carrying the faint smell of iron and scorched stone. Lyra stood at the cliff's edge, staring into an endless wasteland of cracked earth and needle-sharp rock spires. Her silvery hair, once braided with gemstones as a mark of royal status, fell unbound and tangled over torn robes. Sand clung to her skin, and her bare feet were split from walking miles barefoot. Once, her people had referred to her as radiant sovereign of the Varian Empire. Now, the wind whispered the truth. Exiled. Starved. Forgotten. She placed a hand against the cold stone. The planet pulsed with an energy she felt in her bones, a constant hum, like a predator's breath on her neck. Do not die with dignity, the planet seemed to say. Die screaming. Lyra closed her eyes, remembering the court. The memory burned bright. Marble pillars gleamed like frozen starlight. Rows of Varian nobles, pale, tall, fangs hidden behind emotionless faces, watched from elevated seats. A tribunal of counselors stared down at her. Queen Lyra, the High Counselor announced, you refuse to cleanse the Nexar colonies. Their existence threatens our supremacy. She had stood tall then, chin lifted, voice steady. We do not earn strength by destroying the defenseless. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Mercy. Among Varians, that word was poison. Karth, her cousin, the one who coveted the throne, stepped forward. You would show compassion to prey? He sneered. You shame our lineage. Lyra met his gaze without fear. I won't slaughter an entire race to prove authority. Strength without conscience is rot. The council voted. Not for execution. For something worse. Exile her. No feeding. No shelter. Let Averon 9 consume her. Kartha's lips had curved into a triumphant smile. Your mercy will be the death of you. The present rushed back. Lyra opened her eyes. A cold hunger stirred in her veins, the primal Varian thirst. Her body trembled as her senses sharpened. Heartbeats. Warmth. Blood. Except there was nothing alive here. Averon 9 offered neither prey nor mercy. Lyra pressed her hand against her ribs as hunger twisted inside her. Endure. Do not become what they want you to be. She slid down the stone wall, drawing her knees up to her chest. She had no food, no shelter, and no resources. The Varian curse, the vampiric hunger, gnawed at her spine like heated wire. She wouldn't let it win. Not yet. The ground trembled beneath her. A low vibration. Deep. Mechanical. Lyra's head snapped up. Across the sky, a streak of flame tore through the atmosphere, a spacecraft falling from orbit. The engine sputtered and died. Smoke spiraled behind it like a dying comet. The vessel dropped fast. Too fast. It slammed into the rocky plateau below in an explosion of sparks and twisted metal. Lyra blinked once, processing. A crash. Not Varian design. Different silhouette. Clunkier. More functional. Human. Of all the outcomes this cursed world could produce, that was not one she expected. Curiosity, dormant for months, flickered awake. Lyra moved. She descended the cliff in a fluid blur, boots scraping against stone as she leapt from ledge to ledge. Even weakened and half-starved, her body responded with instinctive grace. The crash site was still smoking. Shrapnel and scorched plating littered the ground. Fuel hissed from ruptured lines. A cough sounded from inside the wreckage. Lyra paused, every sense sharpened. Movement. She approached slowly, stepping over sparking wires and warped metal beams. Smoke parted just enough to reveal a man forcing open the cockpit hatch. His uniform was torn, dust smeared across his jaw and neck. He braced one foot against the frame and shoved until the metal bent outward. With a final shove, the hatch crashed to the ground. Lyra studied him in silence. Human male. Mid-30s. Muscular build. Injured. He staggered, clutching his leg. When he spotted her silhouette through the haze, his eyes widened, not in fear, but in readiness. He reached for a side holster. Lyra moved faster. In a blink, she appeared before him, fingers curled around his wrist, pinning his arm without effort. "Do not draw," she said quietly. Her voice carried the soft echo of command, light, melodic, deadly. The human struggled, eyes narrowing. His voice was rough, strained. "Let go." "I will," she said, tightening her grip just enough to show she could snap bone. "If I wanted blood, you'd already be empty." He froze. Lyra released him and stepped back. She scanned him from head to toe, noting the injured leg and shallow breathing. He wasn't a threat. He was in pain. "What is your name, human?" she asked. He wiped soot from his forehead, gaze steady despite the situation. "Ethan," he said. "Ethan Clark." He glanced around the desolate landscape. "Where am I?" "Averon 9, she replied. Recognition shadowed his expression. "That's a dead world." "Exile world," Lyra corrected. His eyes flicked to her torn robes and bare feet. "You're a prisoner here?" Her jaw tightened. "I was a queen." Ethan looked at her for a long moment, not with disbelief, not with pity, just quiet assessment. He leaned against the ruined ship, wincing. "And now?" "No," she murmured. "I am what you see." The wind howled through the wreckage. Metal groaned. Ethan tested his leg, incorrectly. He stumbled. Lyra caught him before he hit the ground. "You're hurt," she said. He gave a humorless laugh. "Figured that out." Lyra hesitated. Helping him meant proximity. Proximity meant temptation. The scent of his blood, sharp and metallic, cut through her self-control like a blade. She turned her face slightly away, forcing her fangs to retract. Ethan noticed. "So you're one of those?" he asked cautiously. Lyra didn't flinch. "My people feed to survive. I choose not to." He blinked. "That a choice or punishment?" "Both." He let out a strained breath. "Well, I don't have time to be breakfast. I need shelter before whatever lives here finds us." Lyra gestured to the horizon. "Nothing lives here except what wants suffering. So you, then?" Her eyes flicked to him. Bold. Direct. Unsuicidal confidence. "How refreshing," she murmured. He straightened, jaw clenched. "Look, I don't need a babysitter. I need somewhere to hide and I'll..." His leg buckled. Lyra caught him again. "Enough pride," she said. "Accept help or die. Those are your options." Ethan opened his mouth to argue. Then stopped. "Fine," he muttered. "You lead." Lyra placed his arm over her shoulders and guided him away from the burning vessel. His weight pressed against her, warm, alive, and every instinct screamed at her to sink her teeth into his throat. But she didn't. She refused. Because she remembered why she was exiled. Mercy. They headed toward the cave system hidden beneath the cliff face. The last light faded as night took hold. Behind them, Ethan's ship crackled and hissed. Ahead of them, the planet waited to test them both. And for the first time since exile, Lyra felt something unfamiliar. Possibility. Ethan limped beside Lyra as they crossed the barren plateau, the wreck of his ship shrinking behind them. Every breath tasted like metal and ash. Averon 9's air carried a cold dryness that scraped his lungs raw. The ground beneath them glittered faintly, crystallized dust that crunched underfoot like breaking glass. Lyra guided him toward a narrow break between two towering slabs of rock. A shadowy opening waited beyond it. "A cave?" Ethan muttered. "A shelter," Lyra corrected. "Temporary." She shifted his weight more firmly across her shoulders. Despite her slender frame, she supported him easily, as though his body weighed nothing. They reached the crevice. Lyra pressed her palm to the rock face. A vibration pulsed through the stone. A hidden crack slid open, revealing a hollow space just large enough for two people. Ethan blinked. That wasn't natural. Lyra didn't answer. She helped him inside, careful not to scrape his injured leg. The interior widened into a chamber lit by faint bioluminescent moss. Pale green light shimmered across damp walls, reflecting in Lyra's silver eyes. Ethan sank against a flat boulder, breathing hard. Pain radiated from his thigh, throbbing in sharp pulses. Lyra crouched. Let me see it. It's fine, he lied. Her expression didn't change, but her tone did, patient yet firm. You walked on it for too long. You risk permanent damage. He hesitated. She reached toward him slowly, telegraphing her intentions so he could stop her if he wanted. He didn't. Lyra tore the fabric around his injury with precise movements. He hissed as she pressed lightly around the swelling. Not broken, she murmured, but strained. Her fingers were cool against his overheated skin. The hunger inside her stirred. She inhaled sharply and turned away, jaw tense. You shouldn't touch me if it bothers you, Ethan said quietly. It doesn't bother me, she replied. It tempts me. He watched her, trying to understand this creature whose eyes glimmered like fractured moonlight. Her strength was obvious. Her restraint was something else entirely. You said you choose not to feed, he said. Why? Lyra remained standing, her posture stiff. Because killing for convenience is weakness. Pretty intense definition of weakness. It is the only one my people respect. Her gaze drifted toward the cave entrance, a habit of vigilance rather than fear. Ethan followed the line of her sight, noticing how her pupils constantly adjusted to the light, always searching for movement. He broke the silence. That cave door, how did it open? Variant technology responds to energy signatures, she said. My bond to royal systems remains, even in exile. Your own people gave you exile, and left you access to ancient tech? No. Her voice thinned. They overlooked this one. Ethan couldn't decide if that was luck or fate. Lyra fetched a bundle of dried vines from a crevice in the wall and arranged them into a makeshift brace for his leg. She wrapped the vines with strips of cloth torn from her robe. You don't owe me anything, Ethan said. Lyra kept working. Perhaps not. Then why help me? She tied the final knot and pulled back, meeting his eyes directly. Because I choose to. Not because I must. Ethan exhaled. That's not how tyrants behave. A flicker, barely noticeable, passed over her face. He struck a nerve. I was not a tyrant, she said. They believed mercy is weakness. I disagreed. He leaned back and closed his eyes. And that's why you're here. Lyra stood, her expression unreadable. Yes. Minutes passed in silence. The cave was quiet except for the faint echo of dripping water deeper within. The sound calmed Ethan's pulse just enough to let him think. I never asked why you crashed, Lyra said. He opened one eye. Bad luck. Worse timing. That is not an answer. Ethan sighed. Someone put a bounty on me. My ship, the Sparrow, got tagged by a spy drone a week ago. 3 vessels gave chase. I dropped into a gravity well to lose them. And instead, you lost the ship, Lyra finished. Pretty much. She studied him, arms folded loosely. Why hunt you? Ethan hesitated. He didn't know why he trusted her enough to tell the truth. Maybe because her eyes held no judgment. I stole something they shouldn't have. Evidence. They were planning a quiet planetary purge. Lyra's gaze sharpened. Your leaders allowed genocide? No. That's why I took the proof. She didn't look surprised. She looked sad. You risked your life to protect strangers, she murmured. He shrugged. Doing nothing felt worse. Something in her posture shifted, an unspoken recognition. She sat across from him, knees drawn up, her back against the stone. We are not so different. I didn't get exiled to a dead planet. You chose danger. I chose compassion. The punishment was the same. Ethan considered that. Maybe your people were afraid of what compassion would inspire. Lyra tilted her head, not in confusion but contemplation. You speak as if kindness is power. Sometimes it scares the right people. She stared at him for a long time. Then something outside, just beyond the cave, shattered the stillness. A distant metallic click. Lyra's posture changed instantly. Every muscle went alert. Her pupils narrowed to slits. Stay silent, she whispered. She glided to the cave entrance, her movement predatory and precise. Ethan's hand instinctively searched his broken holster, only to remember he'd lost the weapon earlier. Lyra leaned just enough to observe the outside. A shadow moved across the rock wall, tall, narrow, walking with an unnatural fluidity. Then another. 2 silhouettes. Their armor refracted the faint twilight like fractured ice. Lyra's voice was barely audible. They found me. Who? Ethan whispered back. Varian hunters. Ethan's pulse spiked. They came all the way to finish the exile? To ensure I die unseen, she replied. A trial without a body invites doubt. The silhouettes paused, scanning the terrain with long sensor staffs. Ethan clenched his jaw. We need a plan. Lyra stepped back, face unreadable. You should stay hidden. No. Her eyes flicked to him, sharp, assessing. You can barely stand. And you're starving. Lyra stiffened, but didn't deny it. He forced himself upright, leaning on the cave wall. We either survive together, or we don't survive at all. A slow breath escaped her. Not irritation, acceptance. Then listen carefully. She pointed toward a narrow shaft leading deeper into the cavern. There's an escape tunnel that leads to the ridge. I will draw them away. Ethan grabbed her wrist, not forceful, just firm. You don't have to face them alone. Lyra stared at his hand on hers. No one had touched her without fear or reverence in years. You are injured, she said softly. And you're outnumbered, he countered. A spark ignited between them, not romantic, not primal, equal. Lyra gently removed his hand, not in rejection, but decision. I will return, she promised. Just don't get yourself killed, Ethan said. Her lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. I did not survive exile to fall to cowards. She slipped into the shadows. Outside, the hunter's sensor lights swept across the entrance. Ethan steadied himself. The vines bracing his leg tore slightly, but he ignored the pain. He wasn't letting her fight alone. Lyra moved through the shadows without sound, her senses stretching across the dead plateau outside the cave. The night wind carried faint scents, burnt metal from the wrecked ship, mineral dust, and something sharper. Ozone. Varian sensor staffs always leaked ozone when active. The hunters were close. 2 figures prowled over the shattered terrain, scanning the ground with spear-like devices. Their helmets were narrow and angular, their armor dark silver with embedded veins of bioluminescent pulse, designed to mimic the gloom of Averon 9. They did not speak. Hunters never wasted breath. Lyra studied the rhythm of their movements. Slow. Calculating. They weren't just searching, they were tracking blood scent. Ethan's crash had left a trail. A distant flare of heat behind her signaled Ethan's approach. He had ignored her command to hide, struggling out of the cave with a strip of metal used as a crutch. Idiot. Stubborn, reckless, infuriating. Her jaw tightened. Brave. He reached her side, breath uneven. You didn't think I'd sit tight, did you? You can barely walk, she hissed. And you can't fight while starving. A hunter turned, sensors locking onto the direction of Ethan's voice. He froze. Lyra pulled him behind a rock spire with inhuman speed. Don't speak, she whispered. Their sensors translate sound into thermal mapping. Ethan nodded, quietly setting a small cylindrical device at their feet, salvage tech from his ship. Blue indicator lights blinked in sequence. Lyra recognized it. A guided detonator? Ship's fuel core is still unstable, he whispered. If we trigger a chain reaction at the wreck, we take them out. She studied him, a human, exhausted and limping, planning strategy under pressure. Most soldiers she knew panic near death. Ethan strategized. You lure them, he continued. I'll ignite the core. Lyra's voice dropped to a whisper. You would risk being seen. Better than letting them find you. He didn't say the word alone, but she heard it anyway. The hunters moved closer, methodical footfalls crushing gravel. Lyra placed her palm briefly against Ethan's chest, an unspoken command to stay hidden. Ethan swallowed hard as she stepped from behind the rock into the open. Her eyes burned faintly silver. A hazard gleam. One hunter spotted her immediately. Target located. Lyra tilted her head, expression unreadable. You always were loyal to commands. Never to thought. The first hunter lunged with a strike meant to impale her through the heart. Lyra dropped into a slide, sweeping his legs from beneath him with a blur of motion. The second hunter swung a sensor staff toward her head. She twisted, caught the shaft mid-arc, and snapped it in two. But she felt the pull of blood hunger inside her, hot, coiling, seductive. Her body longed for sustenance. Her hearing sharpened until she could hear the hunter's pulse rhythms. She forced her gaze away. Not weakness. Discipline. The downed hunter recovered, activating a short-range shock field. Electricity rippled through the ground. Lyra leapt onto a boulder, avoiding the charge, and sprinted toward the wreckage, the bait. The hunters chased her. Ethan waited until they were fully committed. Then, using the metal crutch as leverage, he moved through the cave exit, making his way to the ridge above the crash site. Sweat streaked down his temples. If he fell, he would die. He kept moving. Lyra's voice crackled through the calm line he'd stolen from the cockpit. Tell me when the core is armed. Almost there. Ethan reached a vantage point overlooking the ship. He limped along the ridge until he was directly above the broken hull, then slid into the shattered corridor of the wreckage. The smell of leaking fuel slapped him in the face. He removed the fuel stabilizer override. Wires sparked. The core's internal containment lights flickered from green to red. Core unstable. Detonation potential, extreme. Ethan clicked his communicator. Ready. Down below, Lyra led the hunters in a loose arc around the plateau, her body moving like living lightning. She was fast, but hunger slowed her finesse. One misstep, and it was over. She rushed into the open space beside the wreck. The hunters followed. Now, Ethan. A sudden spike of hunger hit her like a blow. Her vision doubled. She stumbled. The scent of Ethan's blood, still on her from when she carried him, hit her senses like fire. She inhaled sharply, fangs threatening to drop. No. Not him. Not the only being who ever treated her with dignity. Lyra! Ethan shouted from inside the wreck. He saw her falter. The first hunter seized the opening, driving a short blade into her side. She winced but didn't cry out. Pain sharpened her thoughts. Ethan! She breathed. Ignite it, go. He triggered the detonator. Nothing happened. His eyes widened. The failsafe blocked the spark. He crawled deeper into the wreck, scanning the console. Fuel ignition override active. Are you kidding me? He muttered. Of course it has a safety lock. Lyra grappled with the second hunter. Sparks flew as their weapons clashed. Her foot slipped on loose gravel. The hunter pinned her against the hull, fangs bared. You were never worthy of the throne. Lyra's voice was a rasp. If I were like you, I would have kept it. She shoved off the hull, headbutting the hunter with brutal force. The armor cracked. He fell stunned. But the blades still stuck in her side, draining her. Her hunger surged. Loss of blood worsened it. A soft gasp escaped her. She knew the signs, her last restraint thinning. Ethan emerged from the wreck panting. Failsafe won't deactivate. We need a manual ignition. Lyra staggered, breathing fast. What is that supposed to mean? He stepped close, lifting her chin so she would meet his gaze. It means someone has to get the fuel to spark. Metal against metal. Pressure against friction. She shook her head. You cannot. I can, he said simply. Because I'm still standing. He turned to climb back into the wreck. Her hand shot out, grasping his arm with unnatural strength, claws digging into his skin. Hunger burned her vision red. The scent of blood hit her like a gravitational pull. He didn't fight her grip. Didn't recoil. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, exposing his neck. Then take what you need, he said quietly. If drinking my blood keeps you strong enough to survive this, do it. Lyra froze. He wasn't afraid. No trembling. No pleading. Only conviction. Her lips parted, fangs descending involuntarily. Ethan didn't flinch, not even as her breath ghosted against his skin. Just a taste. She could take a fraction. Enough to fight. Enough to. No. Lyra released him abruptly, stepping back with a gasp. I refuse to kill the only person on this world who sees me as more than a weapon, she whispered. Ethan's voice went rough. Then let me be the weapon. He grabbed a shard of metal, struck it against the exposed core housing, and threw it into the fuel spill. The spark hit. The world erupted. A shockwave roared across the plateau, heat flattening everything in its path. Lyra shielded Ethan with her body, her back taking the brunt of the blast. When the dust settled, silence returned to Alveron 9. The hunters were nothing but charred fragments. Ethan lay beneath her, coughing. You saved me. Lyra pulled herself upright, blood running from her side. You risked your life first. He managed a crooked smile. Guess we're even now. Lyra looked at the smoke rising from the wreck, then at him. No, she said softly. Now we are allies. And something unspoken shifted between them. Not hunger. Not survival. But connection. Wind howled over Alveron 9 as dawn crept across the horizon, dim and colorless. Pale light washed over the remains of the exploded ship. Shards of metal steamed against charred rock. Smoke drifted like ghosts. Lyra stood on the ridge, her cloak torn and streaked with ash, one hand pressed to the wound in her side. The explosion had cauterized the cut, but not the pain. Blood dried on her skin in cracked patterns. Ethan stood a few feet away, leaning on a metal rod for support. His face was gray from exhaustion, but his eyes were steady, focused only on her. You're wounded, he said. So are you, Lyra answered. He snorted. Yeah, but you're pretending it doesn't matter. Lyra didn't respond. Her gaze was fixed on the rising dust storm in the distance. A vibration trembled through the ground, subtle but growing. Ethan felt it too. He tightened his grip on the metal rod. You're expecting someone. Lyra's expression hardened. Hunters don't give up after a single failure. They call for their master. A distant hum, deep and metallic, rolled across the emptiness. A Varian dropship. Ethan's jaw clenched. That's them. That is Karth, Lyra corrected quietly. He never delegates the final kill. The dropship descended, its wings shifting into blade formations as it approached. Dust spiraled. The hatch opened with a hiss. Karth emerged. Tall. Beautiful. Monstrous. His armor gleamed like polished bone. His eyes burned crimson instead of Lyra's silver. 2 additional hunters flanked him, but they stayed back. Karth wanted the execution personal. Lyra stepped forward, forcing her body into stillness. Every nerve screamed to collapse. Karth smiled, a slow, pitiless curve. So the rumors were true. The exiled queen lives another day. Lyra's voice stayed level. You tried to hide your fear inside a council verdict. Fear? Karth laughed. I fear nothing. You feared what my compassion could change. Karth's expression shifted, amusement fading. Compassion? You call your weakness a virtue. Ethan stepped beside her. Weakness is killing anyone you can't control. Karth's eyes slid toward the human. And this one defies death to stand at your side. Curious. Lyra spoke before Ethan could answer. He is not your concern. He is a loose end, Karth countered. And loose ends bleed. Karth flicked his wrist. The 2 hunters launched forward. Lyra blurred into motion, faster than pain, faster than thought. The first hunter swung a pulse spear. She sidestepped and grabbed his wrist, twisting sharply until bones snapped. The spear clattered. Pain lanced her wound, but she didn't waver. The second hunter aimed for Ethan. Ethan ducked, swung the metal rod, and cracked the unit against the hunter's jaw. Sparks flew. The hunter stumbled. Lyra finished him, swift, decisive, driving her elbow into his throat. Silence fell. Karth watched, unimpressed. "You fight with desperation, cousin," he said coolly. "Starvation suits you." Lyra ignored the insult. "Leave. I will, after your death." He raised his hand. A shimmering field spread across the rock beneath their feet, a containment dome, opaque and soundproof. No escape. Karth removed his cloak, folding it with ceremonial precision. "Final opportunity," he said. "Kill the human, and I will grant you a clean execution." Ethan bristled. "Wow. Generous." Lyra didn't blink. "I don't need a clean execution. I need nothing from you." Karth stepped closer. "You always believed mercy made you strong." He circled her like a predator. "But mercy steals what we are. It dilutes our power." Lyra held his gaze. "Power without conscience devours the one who wields it." Karth lunged. He moved like a blade, precise, elegant, lethal. Lyra blocked the first strike, slid beneath his second, and kicked his knee sideways. Karth absorbed the blow and countered, striking her wound. Agony shot through her. She fell to one knee. Karth leaned close, voice low. "Feel that? That is what mercy earns." Ethan took a step forward. "Back off." Karth laughed. "You brought a human into this? They break." Ethan didn't back down. "Try me." Karth blurred, and Ethan barely had time to react. Karth struck him hard across the chest, sending him crashing against the rock. Ethan coughed, breath ripped from his lungs. "Stay down," Karth ordered. Ethan spat blood. "You talk too much." Lyra moved before Karth could finish the attack. She swept his legs and pinned him with her forearm. "You strike what you fear," she said. Karth snarled, throwing her off with brute force. They collided again, two forces of the same lineage, opposite philosophies. Dust flared in rings as they moved at speeds the human eye struggled to track. Lyra blocked a strike and countered with a blow to Karth's ribs. He wrenched her arm and twisted her, slamming her to the ground. He seized her by the throat. "You are defective," he hissed. "Then why do you tremble?" Lyra whispered. Karth squeezed, crushing her airway. Ethan pushed himself upright, vision pulsing with dizziness. He grabbed the broken pulse spear from the ground and hurled it. The spear pierced Karth's shoulder. He staggered. Lyra tore free and rolled to her feet. She seized Karth's wrist, spun behind him, and drove her knee into his spine. Karth collapsed, gasping. Lyra stood over him. Karth bared his teeth. "Finish it." Lyra raised her claws. And stopped. Not hesitation. Decision. "My people taught that only domination proves strength," she said. "But domination is fear wearing armor." She withdrew her claws. "I choose a different legacy." Karth stared, stunned. "You won't kill me?" "No," she said. "Because if I become you, exile would win." She stepped back. Karth recoiled as if she had struck him harder than any blow. Ethan limped to her side. "Mercy over murder," he murmured. "That's power." Lyra turned toward the dome wall. She placed her palm against it. The barrier read her biosignature. The field dropped. Wind rushed in. Karth pushed himself to his knees. "Your mercy destroys everything." "No," Lyra said calmly. "It saves what is worth saving." She reached for Ethan's arm, steadying him. He looked at her, pale, exhausted, still standing. "So, what now?" he asked. Lyra lifted her chin toward the distant horizon where clouds thinned, revealing a sliver of pale dawn. "Now," she said, "we leave." "You're abandoning your throne?" "I am abandoning their definition of power." Ethan's lips quirked. And what's your definition? Choice, she answered. A shuttle, one of the hunters, still sat docked nearby. Lyra guided Ethan toward it. As they boarded, the dead world stretched behind them like a discarded nightmare. Inside the cockpit, Ethan slid into the co-pilot's seat, wincing. Lyra activated the controls. Sleepless silver eyes met his. You changed me, she said quietly. Ethan raised a brow. Pretty sure you saved me more than once. Survival was instinct. Mercy was choice. He held her gaze. Then choose your future. Lyra powered the engines. The shuttle rose from Averon 9, leaving exile, hunger, and cruelty behind. For the first time in her life, Lyra didn't feel like a queen. She felt free.